And with that, I want to welcome all of you again. And let's bring on our very first interview for today. Our first speaker is Aya Miyaguchi. Aya is the executive director of the Ethereum Foundation. Ethereum Foundation is the organization that currently pioneers a lot of the developer ecosystem activity from the core development side of the Ethereum protocol, and a lot more things that we're going to discuss about what the EF does and what they would like to do moving forward. We're going to talk about all the things that is on Aya's mind, the opportunity in Japan, and everything in between. So without further ado, please welcome our first talk of today, Aya, to the stage. Nice hat.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
It's been 4 years since we had an official Ethereum event in Japan, back in DEF CON Osaka. I think it's 3.5, 4. I forget if I count COVID or not.
2019.
2019.
Yeah.
Almost 4. How does it feel to be back in Japan? And what are some of the things that you've noticed about this ecosystem in the last 4 years?
Yeah, so Japan, I have like this weird relationship with Japan. I am from here, but I left the country a while ago. I think 16 years ago. But yeah, whenever I guess when I'm outside of Japan, I feel very Japanese. But when I'm back to Japan, I feel very not Japanese. But anyway, so I was very excited about DevCon back then, like happening in where I was from. And it was an exciting gathering, and a lot of developers came from many different places. But I think Japan, I think the crypto or blockchain industry has been always here. But when it comes to, like, especially because we're this Ethereum community and focusing on building side, that wasn't happening as much. I guess it's not just in Japan because Ethereum, the protocol itself wasn't really as ready as it's now. Yes. Today, it's even more ready. But I come here sometimes, right? And then I started to recognize this like a new momentum when interested in.
So you notice the excitement in people. Do you notice students or companies, or what are some obvious things that feel?
Yeah. Well, obviously, it's just similar to in any other countries, or especially in Asia, that the biggest interest used to be like on trading and then a cryptocurrency side, but not really much about, like what you can build and what are the things that are already being built. So that side of like developer community was there, but it wasn't as visible. And now, like, I see a lot of talents are happening here, and then, more developers are coming into even the protocol layer side from Japan, which is very exciting. And also, businesses are interested.
I absolutely agree. Because we do online events, also in addition to in-person hackathons, we get to see what people are applying for the online events. And when we looked at the numbers for where we were seeing the most growth in new people, Japan was number 3 on our list. And it was just obvious to us that we had to be here for our first in-person event. And it's so interesting because we have had the same information for the last few years, and we do see the trend on more trading and more finance and currency-related use cases, but now people are excited about DAOs, NFTs, payments as a means to solve different problems instead of trading. And you notice that immediately too when we saw all the applications what we were building. It was very refreshing, and I get excited about what the opportunity looks like, because anytime you see a new country come into this space, you get to see what they care about. And Japan has the most interesting problems that they're excited about that are different than what the US thinks or what Europe thinks. And to me, Like that's what I get super excited for. You used to be a teacher here. How has being a teacher influenced how you think about being a director at the Ethereum Foundation?
Yeah, well, when I left the teaching job, I didn't really think about, okay, I go to this blockchain space, which didn't even exist really. But in a way, it's funny, I was just having a conversation with some of the core devs on the way here to celebrate Japan to in person, which never happened.
Which is right.
And then they're like, we just started talking about my history here. But yeah, I used to be a teacher, and I used to be a high school teacher, and I was passionate about talking about kind of like letting students have critical thinking minds, and then problems in the world, and that's kind of the core thing of this, how this technology was like started, right? So it is, in a way, in my mind, it is related. And also I left the job because I didn't really like teachers don't really explore the word, and then you just, graduate from college and then you are called sensei here, right? And then I just didn't like that title. Like I didn't feel like I earned a title.
Constantly approving.
Yet, yeah. And then also I was encouraging my students to go outside of the world and then see this is still a tiny country and then mostly just Japanese, and then, but I didn't really much. But I just had an opportunity to, back when I was in San Francisco, my focus in my graduate was sustainable business, financial inclusion, and then that's when I met. That was Bitcoin back then. Ethereum wasn't there. So, yeah. And then after Ethereum was born, like the potential with the technology became, like more than 100x. So that's where.
We'll dig into all of that. So let's zoom out a little bit. What does the EF do?
Oh yes, yeah, and then I didn't really talk about what my teaching really, but maybe I can start with the Ethereum Foundation supports the Ethereum ecosystem, and the important part is we don't own Ethereum, which I need to say because it's more confusing. There are many blockchains now are mostly run by a company, and then also the project of Ethereum is really meaning building the platform protocol. Even like today, you saw the hard fork happen. That work is done by communities, like community members and contributors. So we stay as a coordinator. There are some research and developers also, who belong to the EF, but they also do a lot of coordination work among researchers, among developers. So that the EF does that work, but also since we support the ecosystem, we give grants, and that's like financial support to, of course, like the work of protocol layer that doesn't have business model, but also educational work, community development work, events, like, we see that also as educational work, like your hackathons, and yeah, but then like it's not just financial support is part of it, but what we care is really how we maintain the values and vision of Ethereum, which I often describe as infinite garden.
Tell us more about the Infinite Garden.
Yeah, so the Infinite Garden idea is like infinite. The word infinite was inspired by the book Finite and Infinite Game by James Cars. A finite game, normally like regular games, are played for someone to win. So when someone wins, the game ends. but an infinite game is played for the purpose of continuing the game. So like I thought that is actually already in the special part of the Ethereum community. Hey, like we all work together. Like we often like don't really care about who is winning. It's more like how do we get this hard work, a hard fork, get to the goal all together.
Mass coordination at scale.
Yeah, mass coordination, and there are many multiple like client teams, which are kind of like, supported by businesses. Some of them are supported by businesses, but they all work together. It's not like one of them wins within this game. So, and the garden is really, this ecosystem wasn't really designed like with, roadmap of the ecosystem, like it was organically it grew, but also a lot of things in the Ethereum ecosystem likely happen organically without us doing anything. So that's the beauty of it. So if we don't really have to do anything, that's great. And then if something is happening organically without our support and also in a healthy way, that's the best scenario. So why don't we celebrate that? So that's where, when we identify some key players who are value aligned, like ETH Global, and then, okay, like we don't really have to run hackathons at ZF. There's someone who does it very well, and also making sure values are there. So that's our work, yeah.
I think, so there's two threads here. So one is, it's not like a company, which everybody's used to. I mean, the second we go into a foundation or DAO model, we don't even have good frameworks to map this to. And you kind of shared some of the things that you do if the EF doesn't own Ethereum or doesn't have kind of similar behaves like a company. There's definitely some positives and negatives of this. What gets harder in this model, and what do you kind of feel like you get to improve or you want to improve, but it's not easy because coordination now adds a lot more complexity or time, and how do you think about those types of problems and common cases?
I think the biggest challenge is, well, there are many challenges. Like, this is not just for EF, for Ethereum, is because we play infinite games, that as a whole ecosystem, like things don't, for example, the work of hard fork doesn't go as quick as one company running everything. There's one CTO, and then you can just show the roadmap and then like control everything. So like sometimes the understanding, that there is lack of understanding of like how this works. Even for the merge last year, which because you said there are more like beginners here, the Ethereum shifted, the consensus mechanism shifted from proof of work, which was rely on like mining to secure the network, to proof of stake. So now that reduced more than 99% of energy consumption. But that work was, like everyone wanted that to happen sooner. But then like the work it took longer. And then at the same time, because network was getting bigger, the more people are using it, more people are building things on an application, it's running already. So the bigger it gets, you have to make sure, like the level of security you have to make sure it's very, very, to do that in a decentralized way without one company controlling it is such a, I didn't do it, I just watched and then I supported, but it's such a daunting work, and that is kind of hard for regular company people to understand because it's completely different how things work at a company.
So maybe one thing I think would be helpful for the audience to understand is this, well, this is by design, not this doesn't happen and now we're dealing with it. This is how you wanted it to happen.
Yeah.
And that's what the challenges are because these are the trade-offs. Why do you think that's the way to go? like, why not just have everybody in the same office and just get things done and offer everybody the best and quickest service for what they want, instead of having everybody try their approach and coordinating it? How should somebody think about these trade-offs?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, maybe a lot of people in Ethereum have different way to answer this, but to me personally, Ethereum doesn't really compromise decentralization, and that's, like, you see that in the technology, but also, like, the technical decisions are tied to the values, right? And then we do care about decentralization is one of the most important values that everyone in Ethereum cares. So, like, if you really try to build decentralized system in a centralized way, there, like, you see a lot of, like, different parts that it kind of start to not work. So that's why I can't really emphasize enough how much, like, I just realized recently, because I talked to, like, in Tokyo, I talked to non-Ethereum people or some government people, like, I just realized that I'm in a weird group.
It's either you're crazy or they're crazy.
So it's like something is very, very normal for us. It's not normal for other people, but our people are very opinionated about decentralization. And to the point, like, even, like, I am the executive director of the Ethereum Foundation, because I'm not a regular, like, management boss, like, position. Whether I want it or not, I do want it this way, luckily, but that's actually what's helpful with, like, me being used to be a teacher, because it's kind of similar. Like, okay, we let others.
You have to deal with a lot of teenagers.
That's true. We have a lot of diverse brains.
It's a good thing.
Neurodiversity, but also, yeah, and then it's in every way. It's not just technology. It is, like, how decisions are made, and the people are very careful about, like, I guess that comes from, like, some people really care about. It's like we believe we're part of something that can make systemic changes in the world. So
culture defines all of these things, and if you're not willing to compromise on decentralization or the values or the opportunity, it seems like that's the only outcome that you get for how you can do this without changing the original goal. And that's a very interesting way of putting that.
So I think if we don't do it this way, it becomes like a product, right? And then once the product is like by a company, and I think Ethereum is way, way bigger than that. And then I think people, like, it's not just this is, like, people know this. And that's why we have to be patient, but sometimes the word is not patient. Sometimes the more newer people we have, so the education is important. Explaining things like at events is important. But yeah.
Well, I think this is an interesting thing that you just said a couple minutes ago. So most of us are engineers that are part of these global events or the hackathons. They understand what's happening, or they want to understand what's happening. And even they sometimes struggle to understand some of these concepts. Like, what do you mean this is owned by nobody, or a piece of code, or this is not a company, or this is a DAO that controls other companies that are DAOs, or all these things, which are just brand new concepts. And not only that, it also maps differently to different cultures and countries and people of different industries. What has been some interesting observations you made about telling everybody how the space works in Japan?
Oh, in Japan.
In Japan.
Got it.
What are people weirded out by the most, or what is the hardest thing you have to explain and clarify?
Oh, I see. I think it's, yeah, a lot of, in Japan, a lot of good developers belong to enterprises and big companies. So there is less of this developer community, like, you know, like freelancers, and then that's like, or even the culture of open source is not not a culture, but it's kind of culture. It's also like being open, doing things openly. That's not really common here. So that different type of education, like I needed to explain, actually the mindset shift is also important more than just understanding technology. Like people tend to think of like Japanese people are very diligent about, okay, they have Solidity workshops, or let's learn about the merge workshop. But the cultural side of thing, like how do we learn? Like tomorrow at the hackathon, I'm going to talk about this open learning culture in Ethereum, but how developers in Ethereum, like, you know, learn from each other, or even like anyone can actually build tools for others to learn, or that type of thing. It's very not just here, but it's not easy for Japanese to understand.
What is the best way of thinking about helping them get more comfortable or understand or be part of the same culture?
I think, well, that's one of the reasons why I'm excited about tomorrow, like the hackathon happening tomorrow is
we'll put them in a centralized building and then have them see this. And for 2 days they can't leave.
How Kadik is running around with some dramas happening. But like, yeah, they get to see the vibe, but also they get to see how others are learning from each other. And then like, okay, like it's just that Japanese are very humble. Maybe I'm like, some people might say I'm very not Japanese, but they don't, you know, they never say I'm good at something, right? So they tend to be too humble and not to, they don't even think they can share their, like, you know, you
like
can.
a perfectionism.
Yeah, perfectionism really is something blocking, like, from them to learn English, first of all. But also, like, this is like the beauty of Ethereum is like it's permissionless, meaning like how you participate is, it's all, anyone can participate, like if you want to, right, at any layer. And then like you can write your ideas, ETH research page, but then even that, I think people are very intimidated to do that, and it's okay, is this perfect idea to share?
We're already seeing some of that for this weekend.
Right?
So we kind of talked about developers. How do we make this easier as a country? As you're talking to regulators, they're thinking about new policies right now. Crypto is just getting considered more seriously about how do we make it easy for more companies to start, more people to come in. What do you think, from all of your learnings from your previous work at Kraken to what you've seen about regulation and policies around the world, how can Japan learn from all those things and make it a lot easier for the people here?
Yeah, so Japan did a lot of things, as I was more involved in the regulatory side of conversation with for my previous work. I had to, but the people from the government I often had interaction with from the regulator side, meaning like financial regulators, or that type of discussions. And that was necessary back then, but now it's not just about like making sure bad things not to happen, but it's about like making sure good things to happen, for good things to happen. And how can we do that, or how can government support that? I think it's again like mind shift. But there are regulators' roles. Their role is to make sure for bad things not to happen. But there are other parts of the government. I think trying to, like, this is a new momentum I'm seeing, is like trying to catch up with what they have, or not, like, you know, catch up with the thing that maybe they haven't learned enough. before. And then also, I do want to encourage not just government people, but there are any like more experts in Japan, including maybe Web2 companies or Web2 experts. Like, how do they embrace this? Again, like there needs to be some mind shift. Like, okay, how do we support individual developers for them to stay individual, still contribute to different things like open source? I mean, of course, like application layer, like developers for application layer can happen as a startup or as part of big business or enterprises. But I guess they need to figure out how to embrace the diversity, even in the developer community. And I do want to encourage that I think the status of developers here, there are a lot of talented developers, but it's not embraced enough, like acknowledged enough. So it's still like, okay, a company, normally if it's a big company, management make the decisions and then they tell developers what to build. But how the Ethereum way is that you need to include these developers in the idea generation brainstorming stage, because that's very important to really even come up with the idea. So that change needs to be embraced at the different layers at the company level, but also at the government level. They need to understand that.
Do you think there's hope? You feel optimistic about good policies being set up, or do we need to do a lot more work, or we just got to tell them to also see the hackathon tomorrow? What's the best way to let them make great decisions?
I do. I wasn't optimistic seriously before, but I am optimistic now.
That's really good to hear.
From some conversations, that's why I think this event, hackathon, starting tomorrow, is happening at the perfect timing to boost that momentum that's here. And I really also personally hope, Japan can be a good example of one thing Japan is very good at, that they never say they're good at anything, but they're good at teamwork. So they are good at teamwork, so they actually know how to work as a team. They just need to open that to more different styles of openness, not just within a company, not just within the government. Like, can you create a teamwork with more open community, open society? And that's something I think the Ethereum community can teach or can inspire.
Or show by example.
Yeah. So the hope that happens at hackathons, and also a lot of different things happening this week.
I personally resonate with this. One of the reasons we started ETH Global was when you looked up anything about crypto, all you would see was the negative news. And if you were in this space, you could tell that that's not true, or the weight of what they're emphasizing is way less significant than all the good stuff that's happening. And we wanted to just make sure that anytime something happens in this space, we also equally, if not more, cover the good things and not have that overshadow the bad things. And that is very helpful in policy. That's very helpful in getting people excited. That's very helpful when people are thinking about changing careers and getting into this space. They want to see potential, and we hope that some of these conversations you've had, some of the real life things that will come out this weekend from people, they'll get to see all the good and make better decisions. One interesting thing that you talked about on how culture in Japan works for companies is that it's a very top-down approach, whereas what we've seen firsthand in this space is more bottoms up, and individuals have sometimes very strong opinions, or sometimes they want to just make sure they're working with everybody to make a collective good decision. You effectively are describing coordination. You talked about your goal for the EF is to be a bigger coordination layer. What does that actually mean in practice? What is the time horizon? What are you doing now that you don't want to do in the future? Or what are you not doing now that you want to do in future? What does the next 5 years of EF look like?
Yeah, so like I said, currently the type of coordination we're doing is really we figure out like who to empower, who needs more empowerment, right? And then we also want to make sure that we empower the right ones. And the reason why we do care is not just specifically about whether that team or that project we support succeeds or not, but it's EF still does carry part of the legitimacy of Ethereum or even blockchain space. And then by empowering someone, like we give piece of legitimacy to that team. And so we hope that project or the team to be a good example, like to do again, like to show how this thing, how we work together in this, how we play infinite games in this ecosystem. And then I think it's like originally the Ethereum Foundation used to be the hub of like the place to house developers and researchers who are building the protocol of Ethereum. And EF was the only place. But then like gradually, and then it's just because it is an open source project, anyone can participate. And gradually, that the participants and contributors to the protocol work increased. And so when I joined, it was already that the contributors were way bigger than EF, right? And then so like someone needs to support that, like other contributors. And then we added that supporting role and then coordination role. And then gradually, they think it's naturally we stay as a coordinator. So when I show that, the other day I showed this, my poor hand drawing picture of like there are trees and plants in the garden, and those plants and trees are the ones we support. But we really want to make sure is they get water and sunshine, right? That's more obvious, like financial support.
It's a great analogy.
Yeah, but then actually the roots of each plants and
Go
trees, whether they carry the values, that's you don't even see that from outside. So we do this like, kind of like in the soil, whether there's good nutrition or bad nutrition, because that can be replaced. Yeah. And so that work is becoming more important, and it's going to be the most important thing for us, I believe. That's my, again, like a EF, we discussed with everyone. I don't really get to, or don't really try not to force my idea, but that's how I see it's increasingly, or it will all be the most important things for us to do. And the reason why is because everything else is happening nicely already. And even the one that give sunshine and water, meaning financial support, is not only EF anymore, which is great. And we embrace that. We would love for others to participate.
It's a good sign of an ecosystem too. It shows growth, it shows potential and excitement.
Yeah, so there are other funding mechanisms happening in the ecosystem, and then that is going to increase. So that's why in the future we keep staying as a coordination, and maybe at some point that it's not like coordination is the level of coordination that's needed, and then that's needed to be done by us will decrease. And another way of explaining is that often it's how the easiest way to describe how Ethereum is different and how that vision of EF is that we hold less than 1% of entire Ether, right? 0.28 or less, and percent
of all the supply.
Yeah, all the supply, and then like the asset, the value of asset in the fiat value, which, you know, I think Balaji is going to talk today. So it changes, or, you know, like it's increasing now, but the important part is that ratio goes down. And that shows how we are committed for us to
grow the ecosystem.
To grow the ecosystem, and it doesn't mean like this something that's there will decrease. It's more like it will be distributed, but then we want to make sure if you guys carry a little bit of, right, a little bit of like then
That'll be nice.
Make sure that you just didn't only receive Ether or didn't only receive that, like you are carrying the values, you are carrying the legitimacy, so you are also responsible. So everyone,
you're effectively creating mass scale shareholders that care about the same thing and are aligned, and it's a really big company. I don't know if it's we can call just not company, but
Ether holders. It's shareholder in the same way that as a public company, but it is the part that is how it's different. Yeah.
So everybody opts in to care about the same values, and that's how you grow this garden.
Yeah.
We're nearing at the end. If anybody has any questions, please come over here to the mic. We have a couple minutes for a few questions. So if we have any, we'll just do that. Otherwise, we'll try to wrap this up in a couple minutes. One interesting piece that at least I took away from what you just said is, I don't think we've seen this done before. So not only are you going to be one of the first people to actually try this, but you're going to be doing this thing at a massive scale. Ethereum is now a huge project. Especially with after the merge, there's thousands of people involved, and even for the future of EF, as you think about becoming a better coordinator, there's going to be pieces that you're going to have to figure out in real time. How do you think about doing that, and how do you think about not making mistakes or making mistakes and learning from them?
Yeah, so one of our guiding principles, and we often use, is subtraction, and that can be also misunderstood, is that doesn't, like, it sounds like we do less, right? And actually the amount of work we have to do by making sure we distribute the power, but at the same time making sure values are there. It's actually there a whole lot of, I call it ninja work, under the ground that we have to do, like we talking to different teams and then asking the right questions. So like I have some EF people around there, but they do a lot of hard work, and it's actually more than, it would be a lot easier setting, I'm the ED, here's the COO, and everyone reports to, like, do this way. But we can't do it that way, so it's really a lot of more work to do, and then also subtraction is all about seeking the right balance. So if someone has, it's not just like just cannot be done by manual. Like if we look at some part of infrastructure or public goods or the entire ecosystem, what's missing, but within some domain, what is the balance there? Like, do people know enough about, for example, like among layer 2s, do people know enough about this layer 2, this layer 2? Like, we have to watch how things are happening in the ecosystem, and also making sure we support to maintain the value. Maintain the values, but also maintain the balance. And that's really not an easy work. And then I really appreciate the hard work our EF people are doing. And I have great people in the team that who really understand this. I'm the one who is making sure they understand it, but once they understand it, they're the one who is doing the hard work.
Absolutely. I think because a lot of the people at the EF are not always on the spotlight because they're not the next project a million people are flocking to immediately, or the loudest on Twitter or something. They don't get enough credit, and I want to kind of just thank the entire Ethereum Foundation team for making this entire space possible and pushing forward everything that's happened that we are excited about and we get to use and talk about on a day-to-day basis. So I think they deserve a big round of applause.
Yeah, it's not, I'm more visible one, but there are...
And a lot of them are there, so thank them in person too.
There are a few here.
Just give
Josh
everybody a
is
hat.
sitting there. Chris from ESP is, he's the one from the ecosystem support program. So if you have any questions about grants and how the grants work, that like the question that I mentioned, like what kind of questions they're going to ask, go to talk to him. Yeah, it's really...
And this is kind of the setup that we want, which is everybody is here and you get to have a natural conversation where both parties are interested in helping each other. I think this is a perfect thing to end on. We have 2 questions here. We'll kind of jump right in, and then we'll move on to the rest of the talks. Please.
Hello? Yeah. First, I want to say thank you for all the work that you're both doing to empower people and teams in the ecosystem. And I wanted to know what your vision is for Ethereum playing a role in charter cities, pop-up cities, network states. Like, what role do you think it can have in the development of those cities?
What role Ethereum plays, not EF.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's one of the tools that is helpful for everything you said. But it's you can build applications in any way, like that you can build the governance in any way. So that's like a lot of governance challenges that are happening in normal state or governments. Like hopefully they can do interesting experiments for regular governments to learn, or so I think there's a lot of potential there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Test 1, 2, 3. Test.
Okay.
It's working.
Yeah, so I just had a question in terms of like adoption specifically in Japan. What applications do you believe will be successful? Like some ideas I have are maybe like public goods for like philanthropy, or maybe vending machines, or some other like IoT robotics projects. I was just curious about that.
Do you live in Japan?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you already have more idea than me. So that's something, actually, thank you for a good question, because we really didn't get to cover. I do think Japan has, originally I thought, okay, there's trust here already. Do you even need blockchain, right? That was a question.
It's a really good question, yeah.
There's an honest question that I had. But then I realized that there is sort of the certain talents that are very unique in Japan, like things like, I don't know what you're fascinated about Japan, like, could be gaming, or even anime, or like a creative side of things are pretty, like great here. So like they can, but that doesn't have to be in that industry. But also because there's already some kind of trust, and like I said, the good coordination and teamwork, people are pretty good at that here. So I think even the innovations in DAOs are going to be, like more unique and different. Even like yesterday, I was joining this Tokyo plurality event, and then they were talking, like they were explaining some DAOs that some teams are working on. And then what's interesting is just actually Japanese people less care about commercial things in the deep culture. There are a lot of course, like profit making and businesses are there, of course. But the culturally, people care about quality over profit. And so that's something I'm hoping that can add or teach something to this ecosystem is. And I'm already seeing some of the interesting projects that I don't think this can work outside of Japan. Yeah.
Well, I think one thing we were discussing a few days ago was just the notion of a lot of clubs here, in the sense that there's a membership or being part of a community is a very common pattern
Yeah,
from
that's
kind of
too.
we've
Yeah.
noticed, and that's defining a DAO basically in a lot of
Yeah.
common terms, just being part of an ecosystem.
Yeah, one interesting is there are many point systems that are already well developed. Like if you go somewhere, like you ask that, do you have this point card? So there are other things like Web3 can help and improve existing things, and then that if because there's already existing structures that improvement would be interesting to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered to your question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I
for your
personally
question.
love sending it to greentea.eth and just something coming out of a vending machine. So if you're going to work on that, that'll be great.
Yeah. If that's like actually because I'm Japanese, I may not be paying attention to something that is very unique if you come up from outside. So that's like I love hearing those ideas, and that might be maybe you can teach Japanese. Hey, this is actually unique.
Yeah, I have a prototype for something like this called Way Gold, where you like buy gold with Ethereum and it has like a pair for it. So
Cool.
Awesome.
thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Aya, and
Thank
for
you
kicking
for
off this
having
event.
me. Yes.
Amazing.
Thank you, everyone.